remember that at the end, that will be our prayer of the last words that he spoke. All right, well, I'd like to set the setting, first of all, where we came from here in America and how we got to Israel. However, I would like to start with telling you a little story, and that is Derek Prince, as you have spoken about here, has been very close advisor to Christian Friends of Israel since our beginning.
Praise God.
Derek Prince, Lance Lambert, Frida Lindsay, as you know,
Yes.
you Frida, Dwight Pryor, all these people, you know, were part of our ministry and stayed with us all these years as our counselors, our advisors. We arrived pretty young, pretty green, and so that's important. But I want to tell you a story. He was speaking to a crowd one day in Jerusalem, and after he taught, someone raised their hand and they said, "Derek, where will you retire?" And he said, "I have chosen Jerusalem. That's where I'm going to retire." And someone from the back raised their hand and they said, "With all due respect, Derek, we must correct you. You don't choose Jerusalem. Jerusalem chooses you." Well, he chose Jerusalem still. And so he lived in Jerusalem. We spent many days and hours and evenings with them and had a wonderful relationship. However, just to clarify, Ray was from Iowa, okay? I'm from Illinois. We were born and raised in the Midwest. And so probably the two most or least people who would be called by Jerusalem to come to Jerusalem probably was Ray and I. I won't tell you all the details. We'll be here all day, and hope to write a book about it because it's been very extraordinary lives that we have lived. We were at the height of our careers, so to speak, in America. Ray was a farm manager. He managed 40 farms. And he was also a farm real estate broker. And I worked for judges and lawyers in the Supreme Court reporter's office. So we were very kind of career-minded. And we ended up having our dream home on the lake in the country club. And we thought that was in our 30s. And it wasn't long. Well, let me explain this. In the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s, there was a big move of the Holy Spirit across America. Anybody remember that?
Yes.
Yes. And through Europe. It was the days of Hal Lindsey and the late great planet Earth.
Yes.
We all remember that.
Yep.
And it started with Hal's book. Reading that, someone said, "Why don't you read that book?" And I said, "Okay," and I couldn't put it down. So from then on, it was the days of getting complete. Well, we went to church for all our lives, but we were not saved. How many of you know there are people in the church that aren't saved? Right. And it was the days when we became born again, then we were spirit-filled, and one time at a full gospel businessmen's meeting, Ray went up for prayer because he was a little disenchanted with his work, and the man said, "One day you'll be in full-time service to the Lord." Well, that's not exactly what my husband Ray wanted to hear at that time. We were quite ready for that. And there were words and confirmations in our life, and then God orchestrated himself to get Ray to realize that he was calling us to Jerusalem. And Ray was slow. He chewed on it a long time, thought about it. He was ready to jump on an airplane. And finally, when that word came, he began to think very seriously. And then the Lord kind of gave him a gentle kick. And we knew we were to go to Israel, and we visited Israel in 1975. He went with a man called, oh golly, he was on the television, Maud and Amy, Cathedral of Tomorrow, whatever it was, I forget his name. And we went on a 10-day tour, but we never had any idea we were ever going to move to Israel. No way. So we came back home, and we worked for another 10 years, but we began to study the Bible. And as we began to study the Bible, the whole thing was Israel. We saw Israel in all the books. And then we began to host Bible studies, teach, and share about Israel. And then we went to Israel in 1975. Oh, I'm sorry, I mentioned that, but the fact was, we came back because we were not ready to do anything at that time. We needed to hear from the Lord. And we decided to go to Bible college in Dallas, Texas. And that was at Christ for the Nations. And all of you know where Christ for the Nations is. And I worked for Frida, and Ray was the yearbook manager. And we became very close to the Lindsay family. And there was one day in the last semester in school, Ray received a telephone call. And it was, will you come to Jerusalem? We need you. And so he accepted that position. And we were with that organization for a while. And then we were invited by the cousin of Ord Wingate. You know, you've heard of Ord Wingate, and he was the friend of Zion. He was one who trained Haganah. And he was the warden of the garden too. And America, England, Australia, and France, representatives from the world, came to Jerusalem, and they wanted to see a new ministry started. And we were invited. Because at that time we weren't sure what we were doing in Israel. We just didn't know where we were to go, but they said, we know a young couple and they can do it. And so to make a long story short, they called us, and it fit us like a glove. That's all I can say. The vision began to rise within our spirits of Christian friends of Israel. Proverbs, a friend loveth at all times. And we formed it, and Derek and Lance were very much a part of the counsel and advice that we needed. And those foundations of those leaders I mentioned have been very important to us all these years, because they were solid men of faith. You know, no scandals, no pretending. They were word men of God, and Frida, of course. And so they guided us all along the way. We started very small. It was just Ray and I. And one at a time, everything began to fall into place. Someone taught me how to write a watchman's prayer letter for Israel, you know. A journalist joined us and wrote the Middle East Update. Then Lance Lambert started that, and to report on that. And slowly we began to expand. And through the years, from 1985 all the way up to 2000, we had 3 ministry offices, because we started in the Anglican school then, and then to a home, and then to a college, and then we moved to a hospital in the heart of Jerusalem. And Ray gutted it and restored it for the ministry, because we had grown to a staff of almost 50 people. So God blessed us all along. In the meantime, we had traveled to between 40 and 50 countries. Wow. Around the world many times, and building CFI in the nations, and running CFI. How we did, don't ask me, because all I know is it happened. And we were so happy because we thought we had arrived at our resting place. We didn't need to grow, have a bigger place because we didn't need anything larger. It left room for us to grow. And it was owned by, in Hebrew it's the Saknut, or the Jewish Agency. They told Ray, don't ever try to buy it because we're never selling it. Well, 10 years after we had been in it, and by the way, we worked, I don't know if you remember, did you ever attend a Jerusalem prayer conference in Jerusalem? Gustav Scheller, and you knew him. He was the head of Operation Exodus. And he was linking Christians who would go on ships, and we would go and rescue Jewish people from Russia. And so he hired the Dmitry Shostakovich, and we joined, and we sailed through the agency through the Straits of Marmara all the way across Istanbul into the Black Sea. And we went and we brought Jewish people back. Now to follow a little bit what you spoke, at that time there were some Orthodox people on board. And we could not stare at their people because we might draw them closer to us. And they were in charge of the ship because they had to control the Jewish people who came on board, what they ate. So everybody ate, but the Christians, we had dry toast, a boiled egg, and a little coffee. That's all they gave us. They just did not trust us because we were going to try to change them. And so we made trips on the high seas, and then we went to Russia looking for survivors. There were many adventures that God sent us on, looking for Holocaust survivors all over the world. In the meantime, our work began to expand among the survivors of the Holocaust. Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones who came back home. These people came on the ships. They had been in the valley, basically, of desperation, loss of hope, and loss of hope brings dry bones. And they came back to Israel broken. Israel was busy. This is 1985. And in 1985, Israel was busy building buildings, new settlements, new communities. They were expanding, the military and everything, and they were just too busy to visit these dry bones who were sitting behind their doors, not able to process what they had just been through. They were behind the bars of their memories. They were caught in all of this desperation. It just so happened we were there. So we were allowed to be the first people to go into their homes. We had a word of the Lord who said, you will not explode into the heights. You will work in the depths. And so we had a rabbi who was on staff for 18 years. He fell in love with us. Why? He saw a sign, and it said, Christian, friends of Israel. I did not realize we had any. And so he came in to talk to my husband, and for 2 years they talked. And he stayed 18 years with us. However, when he was buried and he died, you need to hear this. His family would not bury him properly. They threw him in a garbage bag. They buried him in the Jewish cemetery, but they forbid us to go to the memorial because we were Christians. And it split the family and everything, but he would not give us up. He was like a father. So all these things happened to us, all these various things. That one of the things that happened was that the Jews started coming to us in about 2005. They had heard about us. And one Orthodox Jew knocked at the door. And he stuck his head in the door and he said, Sharon? No, he just said, Sharon? How come the Christians didn't follow the Judaism of Jesus? Good question. Good.
Very good question.
Could we answer it? No. We didn't have an answer. We were green. Nobody taught us why. We had no idea about early Christianity. Someone else, they said, there's a rabbi at the head of the church. No, we didn't realize that. And someone else would say, well, you're 2,000 years late, but we're thankful that you're here. As we developed the projects, we started going to Army bases. Today we have 24, 25 Army bases that we support. We started going to the survivors, and we have it on film. They said you were the first Christians to come to us. Then to the trauma victims, and then to the poor and the needy, and then to the Messianic community in Israel. We support all the congregations, and we work now still with Derek Prince Ministries, getting his books out all over the land to the congregations. Then we just, I think there's about 12 or 13 departments that we have today. And we have a distribution center for new immigrants. And it has already received over 250,000 newcomers to the land of Israel. We clothe them. High quality clothing came to the port of Ashdod, and we received them by transport truck to our distribution center. And we also have a bridal department where women all over the world can send their bridal gowns to us. If they're 2 years or around 2 to 3 years, we'll take that. But they came from everywhere. And we have the most beautiful salon, and the only one of believers. And the Orthodox come to us now, Messianic come to us, Christians come to us, Christian Arabs come to us, sometimes just Christians in the country who need one. And then we get invited to the Jewish weddings. So through these 250,000 immigrants who came to us, and we gave away all the Torah and Tanakhs, that is the Jewish scriptures. We were forbidden to. You can't hand out the quote New Testament in the land of Israel if you're Christians, because they watch us, just like Pastor said. And so we geared everything. Okay, that's fine. What did Jesus teach? He taught the Torah. The Torah, the prophets, the Psalms. He taught everything his father gave him. What do you think he taught Christianity? He never knew a Christian. Early Christianity began as a faith movement in Jerusalem of Judaism. It's a sect of Judaism, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I began to study the history of early Christianity. I studied it for 40 years because I had to learn how to answer the questions that we were being asked by the Jewish people. If you don't live among them, they live in their own communities. They don't come into our homes and our establishments. That's why we purchased the distribution center and did projects giving them opportunities for things that they needed as newcomers to the land to get to know Christians. Otherwise, they would not have. So, today, like with the Army, if you come to Christian Friends of Israel and you visit the land and you make arrangements with us, you can go with our staff, our trained staff, to maybe a high security Army base. Visit with the soldiers. Go up to the border of Lebanon, take a look at the land surrounding us. You know, one day I went up, we delivered items the soldiers needed, helmets, vests, knee pads, things like that. And they asked me to speak to 400 soldiers. Those things don't normally happen to Christians in the land.